Good afternoon. I hope that you all can hear me today. Thank you very much for joining us today for Mindfulness and Wellbeing, Practicing Law in Uncertain Times. I'm Anthony Page, and I'm the Dean at FIU Law. And I would also like to thank Jasmin Grant, both for organizing this program, for moderating this program, and in addition, she tells me that we will be in touch regarding your CLE credits. Now, as you probably know, many employers have already begun well-being initiatives. And this is particularly important for lawyers and the challenges that lawyers face. As the New York Times reported a few years ago, lawyers struggle with substance abuse and depression and anxiety more commonly than some other professionals. And based on a study by the ABA, together with the Betty Ford Foundation, the numbers are staggering. 1 in 3 practicing lawyers are problem drinkers. 28% suffer from depression, and almost 20% show symptoms of anxiety. These challenges have been made even worse by recent events, such as the coronavirus pandemic and the dislocation resulting from that, and of course the social unrest that has followed from the murder of George Floyd. At FIU Law, we've been trying to teach our students with a variety of well-being initiatives. And one of our key faculty members in this has been Professor Rosie Lozada. Rosie, in addition to being a member of the Florida Bar and a faculty member here at the law school, she also serves on the executive board of the AALS section on balance and legal education and is the chair-elect of the section. She is committed to well-being initiatives in the profession and in fact is coming off a semester sabbatical and is in the midst of a 1-year training program with UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Research Center in the Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior, where she will become a mindfulness facilitator. She also has been running weekly sessions for FIU staff since we started remotely, and I've personally been able to participate in some of them and I think benefit from them. So at this point, let me turn this over to Professor Lozada.
Thanks, Dean Page. Thank you, Jasmin. And thanks to all of you. I'm a proud member of the FIU Law community. So thanks for coming in today via Zoom to examine this question and maybe get curious about what we can do about well-being in the profession. And I think we're all struggling right now. So this is a good topic for us to take on. I'm going to share my screen if you give me a second. Okay. All right. So lawyers, we're in a tough spot. People turn to lawyers when they're struggling, often in the most difficult times of their lives. And lawyers are expected to come up with solutions in a quick time frame. They're expected to help calm the client, and they're expected to absorb all the stress. And so sometimes I think of lawyers as shock absorbers. What is a shock absorber? I looked it up. It's a term I use without really thinking about it. So it's something that serves to reduce or mitigate the worst effects of an unwelcome occurrence or experience. So that's something that maybe resonates with you. What toll does it take to constantly be absorbing other people's shock? Dean Page alluded to some of the crises in the profession, some of the mental health challenges. And the question is whether we make the space to decompress, to resource ourselves, to check in with ourselves. Often we do not. We usually just move on to put out the next fire. And all the time we tend to dwell very much in our heads. We're comfortable in intellectual spaces. I have this image of the heart and the brain divorced, if you will, from each other. And I think lawyers are very, very comfortable thinking about arguments and opinions, and less so tuning in to how their bodies are doing, how their hearts are doing. And the question is whether this takes a toll. So at this point, I would invite you to give yourself permission to stop, to actually be here. And I've done many CLEs where I check out and I multitask. Spoiler alert, there's really no such thing as multitasking. Your brain's constantly switching and you're depleting a lot of your ability to focus. But take the time to really stop. I'm sure you have hundreds of emails that need your attention, texts that you have to respond to, unanswered phone calls. If you're working from home, there's probably people around you, your family members, maybe even your dogs, wanting your attention. Your to-do list is not just about work these days, but all the things that need fixing and attending to in your home. And we have all these concerns about people who are vulnerable. So maybe take a moment to stop and get off the hamster wheel. All those problems, your to-do list, all those things will still be here at 1 o'clock. Maybe it's okay to just be here for now. And I was thinking about how lawyers, when they're more likely to pay attention, and I thought of when we get text messages, right? We all, like, we hear an alert and we look, and then we feel this impulse, this energy to respond. And so just for a moment, imagine that you sent yourself a text message. Okay, so work with me here. Imagine that you wrote yourself a text message that's telling you to check in with yourself. And it says, hey, you okay? What do you need right now? How are you feeling in this moment? Is your jaw clenched? Is your forehead all stressed out and tight? Where are you feeling tension? This is a long text you wrote yourself. You probably dictated it, so it goes on. Maybe you should just take a second to breathe. Maybe you can roll your neck around, maybe a shoulder roll or two. Maybe you can even stretch out your arms. Maybe take a deep breath in and exhale out. We are always concerned, this is me now, not your text. We are always concerned with meeting other people's needs and meeting other people's expectations, maybe even imagining what those expectations could be. And yet, we don't often take the time to pay attention to what we might need and what's going on inside of us. And we're not so very receptive to this concept of self-care. It's something that lawyers, for some reason, tend to reject. A metaphor might be useful here. So think of the last time you went on a plane, it might have been a while ago, and you get this instruction to put your oxygen mask on first, and then turn your attention to the person next to you, a child, anybody who could use your care. This is not something that our professional culture or our conditioning really prepares us for, right? This concept of self-care. We tend to have all sorts of reactions to the concept, and I put down a few, just see whether they resonate for you. This concept that it's somehow selfish or self-indulgent to take care of yourself, or that it's wimpy, not strong, you know, not tough, or last, even inefficient, unproductive. I mean, you can't bill the time that you take for self-care, right? So let's just get curious about these concepts and revisit them, right? Those are thoughts in your head. Those are reactions you had to this concept of self-care. The thoughts in your head, you may know, are not always true. I always say the mind is a dangerous place. Do not go in there alone. So revisit these concepts and see if it's worth exploring, right? There's a lot going on these days and a lot of research telling us that self-care might just be really critical. A report from the National Task Force on Lawyer Well-Being, which was in part one of the various responses to the statistics and the issues that Dean Page highlighted, reminds us that being a good lawyer requires being a healthy lawyer. What does that mean? To actually be a good lawyer, to be good at what you do, at your craft, you have to also pay attention to your health. And this is a quote from an article that was recently published. Wellness is the new competitive advantage of high-achieving lawyers and law firms. And so we know that wellness is being addressed in the profession and in law schools. And how often do we take time to think about it? The report on lawyer well-being defined well-being as an ongoing process of seeking to thrive in various dimensions of our lives. And here they are. It's a process, right? You don't achieve physical well-being in a day. Think of when you go to the gym, you don't go to the gym in one day and say, today's the day I work out and get into shape. Or today's the day I train for the Boston Marathon. All of these require effort, discipline, and time and awareness. So here they are for you. Some of them we're probably pretty comfortable with, right? So one that I think nobody will question is this concept of physical well-being. We all accept the value of paying attention to our physical well-being, to getting exercise, to our nutrition. This is not something that we question. But what about the others? And I'm highlighting two in particular that I want to bring to your attention today: emotional well-being and social well-being. Lawyers, again, not so comfortable with those concepts. And what does that really do for us? Ignoring our emotions or ignoring our need for social connections. Think about how you might respond to the question, how's it going? So lawyers may give a variation of this response. Oh, it's all good. Crazy busy. We wear that like a badge of honor. Neither of those sound so good to me, actually. Can't complain. Another one, I'm fine, thanks, you. Fine is not really an emotion. It is what it is. That's the one we hear a lot these days. And what exactly does that mean, right? Not too bad. Just keeping my head above water. Okay, that actually kind of sounds scary, right? So all the while we respond like this, and how are we really feeling inside? Again, if you're having these thoughts that, oh, this is wimpy, this is not for me, this isn't what lawyers do, just notice those are thoughts. They're not always true. Allow yourself to be curious about your reactions to the concept of emotional well-being. Now, I want to point out, of course, we compartmentalize. That's part of how we do our work. We all have to compartmentalize. But if all we do is compartmentalize and never come back to those compartments, there's a toll on us. Emotions don't just go away when we push them aside. They eventually manifest in ways, and often we cope with maladaptive responses. Think about the last time somebody set you off and what you might have done. Maybe you had a whole pizza. Maybe you had 2 or 5 glasses of wine. Maybe you reacted in anger to somebody else. A lot of research is being done on emotions and resilience. This is Mark Brackett, who's the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And he's drawn a connection, he's not the first, between being aware of your emotions, understanding your emotions, and being resilient. So some of the things that he's bringing to schools and to adults too, is this is a skill. You can actually learn this. We're not taught this. Well, nowadays they're teaching it in schools, but we didn't have the benefit of this. And we surely know our parents probably didn't walk us through these things. But there's a benefit to identifying your emotions, to understanding their influence in your lives, and then to being able to use them in healthy and productive ways. So this idea of being able to respond rather than react, right? And we live in a very reactive environment. Think of all the possible applications to the legal profession, right? Think of how powerful that would make you to be in touch with your own emotions and being able to respond in skillful ways, and also learning to read other people's emotions. Think of how it would make you better able to connect to a client. Maybe empathy is a word that comes to mind, right? Another skill that I want to draw attention to is seeking help when needed. Lawyers are not very happy campers about seeking help. So I want to just highlight briefly, among many resources out there, Florida Lawyers Assistance is there, and it offers support groups during COVID, among many other resources. So don't discount that. This is the mood meter created by Yale at the Center for Emotional Intelligence. And you don't have to read all these, but think about how nuanced these emotions are, and compare these to it's all good, it is what it is, I'm keeping my head above water. Maybe when someone's checking in with you, you can check in with yourself and see if you're feeling disappointed or fulfilled, or frightened, fearful, or motivated and enthusiastic. And we talked about compartmentalizing, right? So the title of the CLE is in part mindfulness. So where does mindfulness come in? Mindfulness helps you become aware of what's going on inside you, right? You cultivate this awareness, and it brings you into the present moment. Some of the benefits, and just think as I list these, think about whether these might help you in your practice, right? Being less reactive, improving your attention and your awareness, being able to think with more clarity and focus. Who couldn't use a boost to the immune system? And then we all have this tendency to ruminate. We don't just have to live with that. There are possible ways to work with that. And then who couldn't use more sleep, right? We all wake up in the morning thinking, I didn't get enough sleep. And then we go to bed at night thinking I didn't get enough done. Well, one expert who coaches lawyers and is a former practicing attorney, he says that over time, and this is consistent with what's out there, with what the research is telling us, mindfulness practices can help counterbalance some of the negative mindsets that keep attorneys from excelling at business development, building meaningful relationships, and achieving more fulfilling careers. And that's just from the professional standpoint. Think about what it could do in your personal life. This is a tool. Why do I emphasize that it's a tool? It's not a cure-all. It's not the only way to focus on your well-being, but it's a tool that is available to you. This image is taken from the Florida Bar Journal. They did a whole session, a whole series on mindfulness. And this is a lawyer, and you can, all of these words probably look all too familiar. What is mindfulness? First of all, it's a practice. So if you learn to speak another language or to play a musical instrument, or you got really good at a sport when you were growing up or even later in life, you didn't do it in a day, right? It's something you worked at. So this is a practice of bringing your attention on purpose to the present moment. We're often really just thinking about what we just did, what we just said, what we didn't say, what we wish we'd said, what happened 2 days ago, or we're thinking about the future, imagining a happier time, maybe retirement, maybe getting away, or maybe worrying about what could happen. So this concept of bringing your attention to the present moment is really kind of radical, but that's the only moment in which you can live, right? So bringing your attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment and with kindness and curiosity. Those are really tough for us, right? We're experts at judging, and we're pessimists too. We're trained pessimists. We're trained to imagine worst case scenarios, right? And we're constantly judging ourselves. Even now I'm thinking, am I speaking too fast, right? So curiosity and kindness. The kindness is a word we think is for other people. You know, we teach our children and our students, and maybe we mentor people to be kind. I hope we do. But when it comes to directing kindness to ourselves, That just kind of seems icky, for lack of a lawyerly term. Not a cure-all. Again, this is not a replacement for therapy or medication or exercise. It's just a tool, but a very powerful one. Okay, at this point, let me pause and see if there's any questions. Jasmine, has anybody written any questions in? Jasmine, are there any questions?
No, there are no questions right now.
No questions. Okay, super. You're welcome to ask questions. One question that I often get is everybody capable of doing this? Aren't some people wired not to meditate? Like, is this something that everybody should be able to do? I think people ask that because they're afraid that they're the only person who can't be mindful. And again, this is something that you're actually born with, this ability to attend to the present moment. Think of when you see children, toddlers, that's all they know is the present moment, right? You have this ability. Our minds have gotten kind of complicated. So we can bring this back, right? Again, bringing your attention, I'm a teacher, so bear with me, I repeat things, to the present, not the past or the future, on purpose. So this is different from, you're at a red light texting and somebody honks because the light turned green and it was an arrow, so now everybody behind you can't make a left-hand turn and they're pretty upset. This is a choice on purpose. And with this attitude of friendliness towards yourself, kindness, without judgment, suspending judgment. You can judge later, right? And so when those thoughts come of judgment and you're working on this skill, you can say, oh, thanks for your opinion. I'll thank you later, At this point, I want to invite you to participate in a short practice. And the acronym is STOP. Each letter stands for something. I'll walk you through it. You can actually make the acronym stand for whatever works for you. I've often had people come back and say, oh, the P stands for this for me. Or when I think of the S, I think of serenity. So we'll walk through it, but I do want to remind you, this is a skill. It takes time. It's a practice. So you didn't learn to play the piano in one day, right? Another metaphor might help. If you have a puppy, think of what it took to potty train that puppy. He or she didn't get it in a day. And when the puppy didn't go outside and went inside, did you beat up the puppy? Heck no. You were super patient. There, stay. Good girl, good boy, right? Maybe if we're good to puppies, just maybe, we can be good to ourselves. So take a moment to get comfortable for this practice. And you can do this anywhere. You can be sitting or standing. Your eyes can be closed or open. And just take a moment to get your body into a comfortable position. Let yourself be relaxed and at the same time alert. So we begin with the S. S is for stopping and for acknowledging that sometimes we struggle. As we struggle, we can give ourselves permission to be still, to be silent. Turn down the outside noise, just turn down the volume. There's nothing to fix right now. There are no responsibilities that you have to get to right now. Whatever needs to be done can be done in a few moments. You can attend to them later. And so slowly, let yourself settle into your body. If there's an impulse to grab your phone, or if you already have it, and to text, just notice that impulse. Just notice what that feels like in your body. And the T is for take a breath, or 2, or 5. We breathe all day long, but we don't really think about it. The breath is this magical thing. It takes care of us. Your body is breathing. Trust that it's okay to be here with your breath. Your breath can connect your heart, your body, your mind. Your breath is always in the present. Take a moment to notice the inhale and then notice your exhale. And gently prolong the exhale, which will actually trigger a relaxation response. And the O is for observing with openness and curiosity. Sensations in the body, emotions and feelings, and thoughts. The thoughts don't stop. Maybe you're thinking, I need to get my partner to learn how to do this. Or maybe you're thinking, well, of course she can do this. She's an academic, but how am I going to find time for this? Just let those thoughts be what they are. They're just passing thoughts. And if you feel unease, notice that and return to the breath. And if you feel hopeful, notice that. Nothing is excluded. Everything is part of the practice. When thoughts come, you don't have to engage with them. They are just temporary guests. I'll be quiet for a couple minutes to let you practice. And if your attention wanders, just come back and begin again. And moving on to the P, which is for permission to proceed, or for presence, to proceed with the gift of your presence. Maybe with a renewed perspective. What's the rush after all? And As we close this practice, taking a moment to appreciate yourself for taking the time to do this. For taking a time to notice and be grateful for your breathing and for being alive. And extending this appreciation to all the lawyers who are joining you from their homes or their offices. And don't stop there. Extend the appreciation to all the people in your life without limits. And when you're ready, take a couple more breaths purposefully and reconnect with your surroundings. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking the time to practice with me. Let me first just say, sometimes people say, this is really passive. There's so much work to be done, right? And it's true. There is a lot of work to be done. But perhaps if we do take a moment, we can go to the work with a sense of purpose, and maybe we're in a place to be our best selves, more connected to our values. Maybe we're more likely to respond with skill as opposed to react. I see one question from a former student. Leah Lopez writes, what do you think we can do to fight the stigma of mental health issues? There's still too much work to do. Yes, there's a lot of work to do. And part of it, I think, is we all try to pretend that nobody struggles, right? So in part, being willing to share sometimes. And when you share something that you're struggling with, half the time the person that you've confided in is struggling with something similar too. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but talking about it is a big part of it. I know the Florida Bar is doing a lot as well. But yeah, I think we've come a long way, but there's still work to be done. Any other questions?
We have a few questions here, Rosie.
Yes, thanks,
So
Jasmine.
the first question, first I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm Jasmin Grant, the Associate Director of Development. And so we have a few questions here. The first one is, can everyone practice mindfulness? And is it possible that some people aren't wired for mindfulness?
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Thanks, Jasmine. So thanks for that question. I think a lot of times we wonder, are we the one person who can't do this? And why? It's hard, it's very hard, especially when you start. So keep in mind, if you haven't been doing this, you're not going to feel at ease and calm and peaceful. The media shows mindfulness as like these super peaceful people on the beaches with like, wispy hair and wispy clothes and, everything and is like free flowing and they're in this state of bliss. And when you sit down or you are doing a walking meditation or even a running meditation, you're not going to feel that at first. It's a simple instruction, right? Bringing your attention to the present moment on purpose, without judgment, with kindness and curiosity. But the practice itself is not easy. So people who do it regularly do start being able to do it with a little bit less effort. In fact, the main effort required is patience. That's the main effort that's required, patience and perseverance. Any other questions?
Another question here is, how long and how often should I practice mindfulness?
That's a great question. One of the gurus in this world says, how should I know? Which I think is so funny. But in a way, you start where you can, right? You start where you can. And, this is probably a good time to go to habits, right? So it really just depends on you. If you want to bring something into your life, you have to practice it. And if that means starting with 1 minute a day, in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening when you're in bed, then you start with 1 minute. There's a researcher and lecturer out of Stanford who studies habit formation. And it's interesting, our brains have this quality, right, this property of being neuroplasticity. And when I was growing up, we always heard that all the windows would close in adolescence. Like if you hadn't learned a language or an instrument or a skill, in adolescence, then nothing was possible afterwards because your brain stopped, being adaptable. Well, now we have this superpower of the brain, or the brains have neuroplasticity as a property. Now that just means that what we practice grows stronger. And that could be a habit that doesn't serve us, or it could be a habit that does serve us. So the other way of thinking of it too is the neurons that fire together wire together, right? So you start creating new neural pathways the more you practice something. But there's a whole trick to creating habits, right? And the first thing that this professor in Stanford, Kelly McGonigal, says is you have to make it easy. You don't want to start with, I'm going to sit for 20 minutes today. I've never done this before, but darn it, I'm just going to sit here and nobody's going to disturb me and I'm not going to be distracted. Make it easy. Make it easy. You're not going to start, what did I say earlier? You're not going to get in shape by going to the gym for 1 day, right? Make it easy. You're going to try and get in shape over 6 months maybe, and go to the gym 3 times a week for a half hour, or maybe take a walk outside your house around the block. Same with mindfulness. Start easy. And if you struggle with that, whatever you said is your goal, that means you just have to reduce it. Maybe 5 minutes was too long, so tomorrow you try 3. Do something, put something in your environment that will help you remember, right? It could be as simple as a reminder on your phone, or a Post-it on your bathroom mirror. And maybe not just sit for 5 minutes, not just walk for 10 minutes, but why you want to do it. Put underneath the purpose, the intention behind it. And that can actually really help motivate you to do it. Another part of creating habits is putting some enjoyment into it, right? This should be something, it can be something you enjoy doing. And maybe to enjoy it, you might want to reward yourself after you do it. Maybe whatever I don't know what's in your reward system, but you know better than me. Maybe you do it with a friend or a colleague. Maybe you check in with somebody afterwards. Hey, did you do what you were planning to do? Yes, so let's celebrate. Whatever it is, make it fun. And the other component of it is having a mindset of growth. What does that mean? That if you don't, for 3 or 4 days, you don't meet your goal, or you don't sit, or you don't run, or you don't eat healthy, you don't beat yourself up about it, but rather you take that information as what it is, data. Okay, I wasn't able to meet my goal on those days. What was it about the goal I set, or the environment around me, or the reward system that I set up that didn't work for me? So you're like a scientist trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to create this habit? And you're much better off trying to learn rather than viewing it as a failure or as a setback. So I would encourage you right now, if you're still listening, I hope you are, write down something, anything that you could start with this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And remember the various domains we looked at. It could be in any of the domains. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there unless there's any other questions.
There are a few more questions here.
I'm sorry?
There are a few more questions here. I'll
Okay.
read off the first one.
Okay, super.
Any tips for bringing mindfulness practices to our classrooms and getting students engaged?
Any tips? I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Any tips for bringing mindfulness practices to our classrooms and getting students engaged?
Oh, sure. Well, if you're at FIU, there's the Mindfulness Association that is very involved, and they often bring speakers. We had two partners this past spring who shared their practices with us, and we're going to have more in the fall. This is something that we have to do voluntarily, so I don't know that we can bring it into the classroom as a requirement, but it's something that we can create a culture around. It's so closely connected to well-being that it's worthwhile learning about it, and maybe there is room in some curricular areas to incorporate it. So that's a great idea. Thank you. Anything else, Jasmin?
Yes, there's another question. Other than meditation, are there any other mindfulness activities you find helpful?
Oh, yes. Okay, so the mindfulness is something you can do it like sitting or standing quietly, but mindfulness is really something that can spill over into, hopefully will spill over into every part of your life. So if you are running, you can run with mindfulness. What does that mean? That instead of, talking the whole time, and checking your phone every time you're taking a breath, and that you're actually there fully present for the experience. If you're preparing a meal in your home, you're actually there preparing the meal. If you're taking a shower, you're not imagining all the arguments that you've won or lost. You're actually feeling the water on you, right? So any activity can be an activity that you do with mindfulness. Any moment in which you're actually present for your life is a moment of mindfulness. But I really appreciate that question was asked, because I may not have made that clear. And it's really important to remember it's about this quality spilling over into every aspect of your life, so that you're not just mindful when you're sitting, but maybe when your teenager says something that sets you off, and you can just think about how to respond and just be there and wonder, oh, maybe that person's hurting. What's going on? Rather than, who are you to talk to me like that? Same goes with work colleagues, right? Anything else, Jasmin?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Dean Page. I'll turn it over to you, and thanks for this opportunity. My email is down here. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions or reactions to this CLE. Thanks. Oh, and I can share resources with you too, if you want to learn more.
Thank you, Professor Lozada. Thank you, Professor Lozada. I found that really thought-provoking and helpful. And I've got to say, I'm glad I'm not the only person who's totally hopeless at mindfulness. So I really appreciate that. By the way, I didn't think you were speaking too quickly at all. So if that was worrying for you, don't. Thanks to Jasmin Grant, and thanks to all of you. And I hope you all take really good care of yourselves, and please stay safe.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.